All right, hello everyone. Thank you so much for coming. We know there's still some more people who are going to be popping in, but we'll just get started now. I'm Abby. I'm a senior at Princeton Day School in Princeton, New Jersey. We're so happy to have you here. If you've been involved with us before, we're so happy you're back. If this is your first time at an NHS event, we hope this will motivate you to do more with us. And again, we're so glad you're getting to be involved with this. Regardless, we're really excited about this event and know it will benefit all of us as students. So the National High School Climate Forum was founded last summer with the mission of bringing passionate young environmental leaders into a single network in which we can communicate with and learn from one another. Our amazing leadership committee includes students from across the country who are working hard to recruit more schools and organize a virtual National Climate Summit in May, which we'll talk more about later. Tonight's theme is sustainability and carbon neutrality on college campuses. So with that, we'll explore what it means to be carbon neutral, how institutions manage their environmental goals, and what challenges they may face along the way. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Holly, who's going to introduce our first speaker.
Hi, everyone. I'm Holly. I'm a senior at Princeton Day School. Tonight for you, we have two speakers. The first is Dr. Shayna Weber, who currently serves as Director of the Office of Sustainability at Princeton University. Dr. Weber received her BS in Zoology from Ohio State University and her PhD in Environmental Science from the Indiana University School of Public and Environmental Affairs in Bloomington. Her independent research includes a study of pikas, which are animals in the rabbit family that are increasingly affected by global warming and climate change. At Princeton, she also directs the Princeton University Student Environmental Communication Network, which features student broadcasts and video perspectives on sustainability. Thank you, Dr. Weber, for joining us today.
We are also joined by Mr. Tom Twist, Sustainability Manager at Bates College in Lewiston, Maine. Before coming to Bates, Mr. Twist worked as the Sustainability Officer for the Chewonki Foundation. He earned his BS in Environmental Microbiology from the State University of New York College of Environmental Science, and he earned a master's degree in sustainability from Harvard University. Mr. Twist also supervises the EcoReps program at Bates, in which he works with students to integrate sustainability into the existing systems of the college in order to ensure the longevity of their work.
Thank you both for being here today, and we'll start off with Dr. Weber's presentation.
Thank you very much. It's really a pleasure to be here with all of you. So I'm going to share my screen and share a few things with you about Princeton sustainability efforts. And I'm going to focus mostly on the climate angle of the work we're doing, given the focus of this group. But there's a lot more going on outside of the climate arena as well. But I wanted to start with this sort of guiding principle that we try to embody in the work that we do. So we really are trying to think about everything we do on the campus at the scale of being a member of a global community. So are we doing things on the campus that are helping to advance our understanding as a global community and in service to the communities around the world? So we're tinkering very locally, right? And trying to problem solve right on the campus, but in that context of the global driving issues. So I just wanted to share that with you as a starting thought. I also wanted to just share quickly some elements that I think are important when you're looking at a college campus, and soon many of you will be on college campuses. And what do you look for in sustainability on a college campus? Like, what are the signs that it's a place that embraces the challenge of it, and what can you do as a student to be part of that story and part of that journey? So, I mean, a few things that seem to be common elements, and in many of the institutions that I work with across the country is first, a set of goals to work towards. So once an institution has those, you can kind of galvanize the community around it and move towards them. So having those goals is a really helpful coalition building effort, right? There are some visible things that serve as educational prompts for sustainability because you're running into them in your daily life on campus. And then of course there should be lots of invisible stuff going on as well with systems and process and infrastructure and all that stuff. I'm finding that, it's such a joy to work in this field because everyone I work with, no matter what institution they're with, everyone is in constant learning mode. And that's awesome because it keeps things really fresh and it keeps us all learning from each other because every campus is good at something different. So I love that element of leadership is that constant curiosity and learning mode. Collaborations seems to be a really important thing. If it's the kind of place where you can see how the collaborations and connections can happen in the problem solving, that's a great sign. That there's some sort of decision-making process in place around sustainability, that it's clear who you go to ask questions of. Willingness to actually think beyond the financial. So that's a tough one, right? Because many institutions are really financially strapped. So how do you incorporate the human dimensions in with the financial considerations? And this is all about how do you create change, right? So a willingness to look at that. Institutions that have strong curricula around sustainability have the internal academic expertise to inform conversations. And most institutions have curriculum around sustainability now. So that's exciting to see. That was not the case 10 years ago. Diverse voices at the problem solving table. That's critical. So the sustainability field is in higher ed is largely white. But we're seeing students who are coming into the field and working with offices of sustainability showing up as much, much more diverse. And that is also really encouraging because those are the future leaders of sustainability programs. So that's a great thing. And being part of a community, right? So campuses sometimes feel like they're little bubbles, in a community when in fact that's an artificial separation. We're members of the community, whether we act like it or not. So the campuses that really work on those relationships and have dynamic relationships with as members of the community also have strong leadership potential. All right, so I'm going to focus a few minutes on this topic. So Princeton has a goal of reaching carbon neutrality by 2046, which is the 300th anniversary of the institution. So it's a culturally significant moment for the institution that we anchored the goal to, which was before mid-century. So when we set that, it was meant to achieve the target before mid-century, which is of course an evidence-based, science-based objective. And to anchor it to that culturally significant moment for this place. So that was done very deliberately. 2046 is just a date of convenience, but it serves the purpose of giving us that anchor in the future. These are at a very high level. This is basically how we're going to get there. And this is similar to plans that other institutions are starting to implement. So right now we burn a lot of natural gas on campus, and we want to wean ourselves off of natural gas over time. And the way we're going to do that is first a massive infrastructure change. So we heat our buildings with heat. as you can imagine, on a campus like Princeton's, it's an old campus and there's lots of old pipes and they're going to have to get replaced anyway. So why replace them with an antiquated technology? So we're going to take advantage of digging them up and replacing them with a technology that will allow us to be fully renewably powered well before 2046, ideally. So that's the blue wedge. The green wedge is maximizing the amount of renewable energy on campus, which will be solar PV. But we don't have enough land to cover all of our needs with our own property. So we're gonna have to go off campus and develop renewable power off campus to make up the difference. So that's probably going to be a mix of solar PV and offshore wind. And then there's a little bit at the end that we have to account for that we're calling an innovation gap, because we know stuff's going to come along that we're going to be able to fill in those gaps at the end, either with biofuels or some creative community-based offsets or some other option. So we do have a roadmap for how to get there. And I like this image because this is the start of the action. This drilling rig is like what it looks like. This is what sustainability looks like right now, is a standard well drilling rig. And this is the first moment when the big scale infrastructure change started on our campus in the fall of 2019. So we're switching from our central power plant that burns natural gas to a geo-exchange system on campus, which is basically hundreds of wells where we circulate fluid in closed loop pipes and take advantage of the constant temperature of the earth to regulate the temperatures in our buildings. So this is what it looks like. It's not like, this is stuff we know how to do. And we have faculty members who are studying it. So not only are we making this transition, but we have academic engagement in studying it, and which will help us optimize it over time. And it represents something that's repeatable and scalable. So pretty excited about that. It's just a quick image of what GeoExchange is. Pretty simple in concept. Solar PV, so as I said, we're going to maximize that. And by the time we build it out, it will reach about 20% of our electricity needs. So we have to take care of the rest with off-campus renewable energy options. All right, I want to talk about water usage just for a minute because it relates to energy. So these are the cooling towers at our central plant right now. We have to actually exhaust heat from the plant, and a ton of water evaporates out of this system. The central plant actually uses about half of the entire campus's water use. So as we wean ourselves away from the central plant, we will be using far less water. We're talking millions of gallons every year because we're switching to this geo-exchange system. So a shift in energy infrastructure is also resulting in an enormous amount of water savings. And that's what a lot of the academics call the energy water nexus. There's a class at Princeton called that. So that's really exciting when you get those synergies, right? And this is what the water usage looks like. Everything on the top half is central plant related. Everything underneath is the rest of the campus. So almost half. And this is what water use reduction looks like as we predict the water usage over time out to 2046 from today. So this is a pretty busy graph, but you see the trend. So this is what we anticipate. And you know, the y-axis is in the millions of gallons. So this is a big deal. All right, so I have a lot more that I can talk about, but I'm gonna actually stop there. And so we have time for Q&A later.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Weber. Mr. Twist?
Okay, thank you, Hope. So hello, everyone. My name is Tom Twist, and I run the Sustainability Office at Bates College. And I'll pull up my slides for everyone. Okay, so again, thank you for having me as a speaker. I'm really excited to speak to this group. I'm going to talk about Bates College, our sustainability path, with a particular emphasis on carbon neutrality. We were able as a college to hit our carbon neutrality goal 1 year early in 2019. And I'm going to talk about how we got there. And I'm going to be very transparent about the process, and hopefully folks listening in on this can take away some things that they may be able to use in their high school or in whatever college they end up going to. So I'm going to be forewarned, there are going to be some complex looking graphs in this presentation, so I apologize ahead of time. This graph is kind of interesting. This is from the IPCC data, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and it's very beautiful. It is also one of the scariest graphs I've ever seen in my entire life. So what we're looking at here is left-hand axis is gigatons of carbon dioxide. The x-axis is the years, obviously. And what we're looking at is the steepness of the emissions reduction that the world needs to make over the next few years to basically keep our planet at a habitable temperature. And I like to I like to start off with this extremely scary graph because it kind of puts in context all the other stuff that we're working on at Bates. As Dr. Weber rightly said, sustainability could mean a lot of different things. What I've chosen to talk about during this presentation is mostly around carbon because we feel like it's the biggest sort of ticking time bomb, and it's what we are laser focused on. So this is a similar graph, but this is much more local. So this is Bates College, our carbon emissions from 2001 to 2020. It's laid out similarly to the graph that you just saw. On the y-axis, we have metric tons of carbon dioxide, and then the years are 2001 through 2020. And this is very exciting. This is has been our path to carbon neutrality. And I'll go through, you can see there's some large dips, there's some level places, and then there's other sort of smoother curves. I'll talk about what that means and what we did to do that. I also want to show this graph here, which is the same graph that you just saw, but the red line is a term called business as usual. And that means if we had done no energy efficiency work, no sustainability work, it's like the graph, the red line would be if I was never born. Basically. And we had done no sustainability work at the college. You could see how much worse we would be in terms of our carbon emissions. And let me go back for a second. We were able to do this through three main things. One was a change towards renewable fuels. The second one was energy efficiency. And the third one was really supporting the students with sustainability campus culture. So I'll talk about all three of those. And again, I'll be pretty transparent about what we did right, what we did wrong, and hopefully some lessons learned. So like Dr. Weber said at Princeton, we also have a steam plant. You could see the underground steam line here. And we were, as of maybe 5 years ago, burning a variety of fossil fuels. We were burning heating oil or natural gas, depending on which was cheaper. And then about 4 years ago, we started burning a completely novel wood-based liquid fuel, which, as far as I know, we're the only school in America to be burning this fuel, which is pretty exciting. And it's a relatively low-cost retrofit for liquid fuels. And that's why we were able to switch over so cheaply. The fuel does not have it's not zero in terms of carbon footprint, but it's much less than what we were burning before, which was heating oil and natural gas. So that has helped us move forward in that front. We also have been investing in solar quite heavily. We have a few small solar arrays on campus, but we are constrained by, we're basically a city campus. We're in the city of Lewiston. And so we also have a project that should be completed next spring, a large ground mounted solar array that will account for about 3/4 of our total power. This is, I mentioned this because solar is now an opportunity for many schools, as I'm sure you know. If, for example, your high school or your future college is looking at this, you should be aware that many solar projects require no money upfront, but are able to produce savings really right from day one. So from day one, it is a net gain to the school. And that really sort of greases the wheels in terms of having things happen. That I know that sounds kind of like a pyramid scheme, but the way it works is essentially many schools will lease a solar array like you would lease a car. So for just to throw some numbers out there, our lease for this particular solar array is about $700,000 a year. And taking a loan, that would be a loss to the college. But the solar electricity is actually worth 1.1 million that we get from the array. So you could see right up front, the difference between those two is what the school would get day one and for the next 20 years, which is the length of the lease that we've signed. So it's a helpful thing to know if you're trying to push your school to go towards solar. This is the second way we were able to reduce our carbon footprint, energy efficiency. I only have one slide on this because students often find this kind of boring. But it's important to note we're in Maine, one of the colder states of the nation. And I personally am in love with energy efficiency. And I feel like it's one of the really unsung heroes of the carbon reduction movement. Another thing to have on your radar is that building technology has come so far that there's many great standards, Passive House being one of them, where the buildings require so very little heat to run during the coldest days of the year that it almost feels like science fiction. And the wonderful thing about these buildings are you'll see about a 80% fuel use reduction, but in many cases they are the same cost to build as a code-built building, especially for bigger buildings. So that's a great thing to know and be able to cite to your school. And lastly, we really try to empower the students to take responsibility of sustainability at Bates. And I'm perhaps the proudest of this particular aspect. Students are involved in any sustainability project that we do at the college, hands down. And that's been very exciting. One of the things that we do is we offer grants to the students to, essentially the way it works is if a student has a good sustainability idea, they'll submit an application, we give them money to do it. And then I think what's interesting is that they become the project manager for that project. And so they are able to make that happen, which is very exciting. And one of, just an example of some of these projects, students did the research and eliminated all disposable everything from from our dining commons just by doing research and finding out that it wouldn't cost any more to do a more sustainable option. They also started a campus garden, which is completely organic and no-till and run by the students, which is very exciting. They created these compost bins and paid for them from a grant and initiated composting on campus. This is a group, this is just a ridiculous group, ridiculous picture. These are the paid sustainability students that work for my office. They're wonderful. You can see they're doing like a prom pose picture in the back. I'm not sure why. And then this is what I sort of wanted to end with. The Princeton review, Dr. Weber and I were talking about this right before this presentation started. This is very exciting. So the Princeton review just did a survey of incoming first years, and they found that about 75% said that the environmental commitment would really affect their decision, which is very exciting. And that is up from 66% just last year. And I'm not a gambling man, but I feel like within my lifetime, this number will never go down. It will always either stay the same or go up just because of the crises that we're facing. So, okay, and that's it for me. Thanks very much. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much to both of you. Those presentations were great. And now we're going to move on to the Q&A part of this session. So we have some questions that have come in while people have registered. We have some that we've thought of ourselves. And audience, we would absolutely love for you to ask questions in the Q&A box. And we can answer, and we can have Dr. Weber and Mr. Twist answer them live. But for now, we would like to start with a very relevant question that I think we can all kind of relate to right now, and it's for both of you. How has COVID learning and the pandemic affected your sustainability work? And what have you had to sacrifice during this process, and what have you gained?
Well, I'll start. It's such a good question. So obviously a tremendous amount has gotten disrupted this last year. And I would imagine Tom's experienced the same of, programs had to pivot or completely change or go on pause. And from the student experience standpoint, but something that surprised me is how much drive the students continued to have for sustainability, even while 100% remote. Like the Office of Sustainability's work did not slow down one bit, which was deeply encouraging to me. So we had to change a lot of things, but the engagement piece was wonderful. And I think it actually, on the positive side of the ledger, it actually helped focus certain things, certain initiatives. And it's almost like it kind of forced us to cut out, like, okay, we simply can't do all the stuff we were doing before. So let's focus on the stuff that's really important. And I think that exercise is actually super helpful going forward. So trying to maintain that discipline is the challenge. On the difficult side of the ledger, the pandemic had some unanticipated consequences from an energy use standpoint. I mean, big picture, right? Big global patterns were changing. People were traveling dramatically less. Skies were clearer all over the world. Like, it was amazing to see the global data over big cities that are usually just incredibly polluted, to see that air quality change. Locally, though, like, and on many campuses and corporate campuses across the country, we were told that we had to ramp up our air exchanges. That's the most energy intensive thing. Well, probably not the most intensive it is in lab buildings. So, essentially you're flushing the building out and you have to bring fresh air in, you have to condition it. So we had to do a lot more of that. Especially starting in the fall. So it was a bit of a backward slide in terms of campus energy usage, but on the positive side, it has stimulated a whole bunch of research on the academic side. Like, how do how do we build resilience in our energy systems for the next time this happens? How do we think about the heating and cooling systems and air exchange systems in buildings differently? So tons of lessons learned, and I think we're just going to spend the next couple of years, unpacking all of it.
Yeah, the same. It was a mixed bag, just like Dr. Weber alluded to. We have a tremendous problem on campus this year with waste. So for my presentation, I just tried to focus on energy and climate stuff, but we try to make headway on all sorts of sustainability issues, and waste this year was really outlandish. We basically closed our dining commons and gave students all to-go boxes to eat in the rooms and outside and things like that. And as you can imagine, it is out of control. My only consolation is hopefully it'll just be 1 year. Also, as Dr. Weber said, the air exchange thing was big for us. We used more energy this year than in previous years. And the silver lining has been travel, commuting. We take responsibility for really quick, like scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. Scope 1 is everything you burn on campus. Scope 2 is all electricity, and scope 3 is basically like a catch-all for all indirect emissions. So we take responsibility for, in terms of scope 3, all travel. With that was way down. And one of the biggest slices of our pie for maintaining carbon neutrality is actually staff and faculty commuting, and that was way down too. One of the things I'm hoping for is that we continue some part of the telecommuting trend where people are working from home some of the time, and that would have a big impact. And then also, like Dr. Weber, I thought, I've been very impressed with the student culture. I mean, even this, right? Think of how many Zoom meetings you have to sit in each day, and everyone's voluntarily watching this one, which is pretty lovely, really. And so I think the students they have not lost focus despite all of the challenges of this year, which is really cool to see.
Awesome. Thank you both for your insights into this year. That's really cool to see. So another question for both of you: what is your interaction like with students regarding sustainability? Do you work mostly with students studying environmental science or students who are passionate about it regardless of their major?
So yeah, I mean, working with students is probably the most rewarding part of the job, in my opinion, because it keeps me going. Hearing about what the students are passionate about, and hearing about hearing the creative ideas they bring to the table, and keeping it fresh and relevant, to students. So it's phenomenal fun, really. And I find that the Office of Sustainability is actually able to bring students into conversation with other administrators who may not have much contact with students. And that also is a lovely, lovely thing. So like our vice president for facilities, right? He's spending all day, every day, sitting in administrative meetings and has very little chance to interact with students. And he just loves it when that happens. So like the office sort of serves as kind of a conduit. And that's great. I'm also really fortunate to teach a course every year for our environmental institute on campus. And so I get students from all majors, all disciplines, all sort of backgrounds coming to the class because they're either already passionate about sustainability or they want to learn more and they haven't had much exposure to it so far. So, and actually that's also incredibly rewarding, because we don't want to always be talking to the choir, right? We want to spread the dialogue more broadly. So working with students is like part of the bread and butter of what we do. Take it, and it's very, very important. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add over that, but I would just agree. It's been, I came from a place that was heavily, a lot of experiential learning with students and that sort of thing. And what I feel is really nice about the sustainability movement is we're involving students in things that are usually relegated to professionals. And they've been great at it. Really, they're just as smart, or sadly, in many cases, smarter than myself. And all they really lack is experience in that particular area. So we have the students work on calculating our carbon footprint. We have the students going after grant money, pitching certain projects to our board. And so we don't pull our punches when it comes to the students. We involve them in all the high level stuff. And it is more work, but it's been great so far. And they've really risen to the challenge, which has been wonderful.
That's great. The next question is, how do Princeton and Bates engage in helping other universities around them with sustainability? What does that network look like?
Tom, you want to go first on this one?
No, I'm okay with this rotation.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So that's also part of what I love about the work, is that it's very network oriented. So we're constantly trying to work together. So, you know, like Bates and Princeton, we're both part of the same Northeast network. And that's actually one of my favorite networks, because we're such a mix of institutions. We kind of share a geographic area. So we share like weather and, you know, sort of grid scale systems. And so we have those common denominators, but a huge range of different institution types. So I think we all gain an appreciation of like what challenges different campuses are facing. And you know, we tend to try to support each other as much as possible by sharing information, sharing contacts, sharing, I mean, the very mundane and boring behind the scenes things like contract language. Like, how do I write this contract for this like sustainability consultant I need? And we'll share those kinds of resources with each other. In New Jersey, there's a and I don't know if the same is true in Maine, but there's a statewide network. There's one in Maine too. So there's not always a dedicated sustainability manager or sustainability director at the different higher ed institutions, but there's always somebody who has some portion of their job dedicated to that. And so we're all part of a network in the state too. So that's a really important part, because I just want to share one concept that we talk about a lot, and that is collective impact. Like the things we do together, especially if we're coordinated about it in some way, makes our voice much, much louder. And we can kind of amplify each other's work that helps all of us. So that collective impact concept is something we talk about a lot across our campuses.
Yeah, and you know, since Dr. Weber, you bring up the collective impact, Maine has a little sort of consortium of schools as well. And I think it's been wonderful. It's one of my favorite meetings to go to. I think we haven't yet fully utilized the weight of collective impact, at least with our group in Maine, because I think that's a major thing that we just haven't gotten on the same page with. Your mention of ideas, I think, has been idea sharing between all these colleges and universities have been really wonderful. We're in the process of developing our next climate action plan. So looking at 2030, and just to look around and talk to other folks, other peers, and see. It's been great. I mean, basically, you get to sort of cherry pick the best ideas and say, oh, that's wonderful. Like, why aren't we doing that? So yeah, that's it's been very helpful.
And can I just add one more thing to that idea? So there have been times with these networks where we've actually developed shared summer internship programs for students where, you know, 3 or 4 schools are interested in the same, like sort of digging into the same topic. So like one year we were looking at, you know, what's the best information out there about green labs? And 3 institutions across our network agreed to each hire a summer intern for like 8 or 10 weeks. And the three students worked together across the 3 institutions to compile like the package of best information that was then shared out. So those are the kinds of things that can happen when you have an active network, and there's real direct benefit to students. That's just one example.
So there's a network both at the student level and administrative. That's great. And I'm so happy that the forum is a great example of interactions on the student level between all these high schools.
Exactly.
So next is a question for Mr. Twist. So we were wondering, do you think carbon neutrality is an achievable goal for all colleges? Have you seen any particular struggles? And then someone asked if you could just again repeat the 3 sort of steps to attaining carbon neutrality. And then I'll just ask a follow-up a little after that, but start with that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know is the answer. Are there challenges? Like, yes, it is a very, very challenging goal. Again, there's only a handful of schools in the nation that have done it. And it is extremely challenging. I mean, if you think about just making your house carbon neutral and how difficult that might be, and then expanding that to hundreds of buildings, it is very, and like Dr. Weber said, Bates is no exception. A lot of college campuses have super old buildings, and you're lucky if a lot of them have any insulation at all when you get started. I mean, it's really, really challenging. In terms of the 3 sort of steps that we were looking at, I think, I'll start with the energy efficiency one. We were able to reduce our carbon footprint probably 30 to 40% just with energy efficiency. And many of those projects have less than a 3-year payback. Some of the projects, and this is something you might want to pitch to your schools, had a less than a 1-year payback, which means you could pay for it within that year's budget cycle, which is really wonderful. So that, I think, that's the direction we're really moving in over the next 10 years, is to get so low with our building energy use that people don't believe us when we actually say our goals. That is my goal, to make it so incredibly low that there's cognitive dissonance when I tell people what it is. So energy efficiency is really the best place to start, and there's tons of incentives out there. The other one is fuel switching of some kind. So either just looking at your central steam plant or central heating plant, either moving towards some sort of less carbon intensive fuel like a biofuel or something, or probably where Bates will eventually go is in the same direction as Princeton, which is electrification of things that were once upon a time on fossil fuels. So either a geo-exchange. Many of our buildings now operate with air source heat pumps, which is like geo-exchange, but without the wells. There's pros and cons to those. And then our transportation fleet is something I didn't mention. Moving in the direction of electric vehicles is, I think, for many schools, just get a no-brainer. They expect electric vehicles to be at cost parity with regular vehicles in like 2023, and then after that they'll be cheaper. So I think we've really passed an inflection point in terms of what that market will look like. So I think fuel switching, and then if you're going to go the route of electrification, then looking at solar production, either on campus or off campus, is the way to go. And then the culture piece is technically the cheapest way to go, but it is the hardest nut to crack by far. Because culture is a tricky thing, as I'm sure all of you know, trying to do environmental work at your high school. So yeah, I think, did I answer all the questions?
Yeah, and then just a follow-up to that, I think this is a really great question that we got in the chat. What are some creative things that schools like, specifically high schools with more limited resources than Bates or Princeton can do to hit their carbon neutrality goals?
Yeah, is that for me or
For
Dr.
you,
you wanna? Oh,
or
okay.
well, either of you, but.
All right, Dr. Weber, do you want to go first? I've been talking a lot.
All right. Okay. Well, I'll give it a try. Well, I think what Tom was saying about energy efficiency is so right on. It's like not the sexy thing to do, but it's like the no-brainer thing to do. And there were a few years there when there was a lot less attention on energy efficiency, and many of us were like, wait, we gotta we gotta put the spotlight back on that, because you're really working against yourself if you don't do that. So the town of Princeton, just as an example, has its own climate action plan, and we worked in partnership to help develop that because we're part of the community. Part of that plan was to look at the municipal buildings and the schools. So because energy efficiency can pay for itself so quickly, it's a much easier conversation to have in that annual budget cycle than many other things that you could talk about, like major infrastructure change. So that is the place to start for sure. And there's usually state incentives that will help pay for most of it. So it's a matter of the sort of wherewithal and time it takes to kind of pull those pieces together and get the funding and do the projects. But I think that's where the bulk of the really important work is, at the municipal and sort of school district level. I don't know, Tom, if you have a different take on that.
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on. And in terms of if you're a high school student right now and trying to pitch something to your administration, what we encounter a lot from our students before they work with our office is they have an idea, but they haven't yet looked at, they haven't empathized with what the administrators' worries and concerns will be, if that makes sense. So like empathy is an important piece of developing this. So because no one is really, in my experience, anti-sustainability. They just don't have the time or they don't have the money. And so if you could really do your homework and find an alternative to what they're doing right now, which I'm assuming is unsustainable, a more sustainable alternative that either does not cost them more money or either saves them or does not cost them more time, chances are you'll be effective, and they'll really hear you out. And if you have a nice case and you've done your homework, I think you'll gain some ground.
Awesome. So our next question is for Dr. Weber. How do you work with students advocating for divestment, and how do you separate your personal opinions from your administrative role?
Excellent question. So I consider, so I am a university administrator. So I have a particular role, and I can be really effective in that role. And so in my mind, I have to keep a distinction between my administrative role and my activist self, because those are two different toolkits. They're both effective, but I have to be really careful as an administrator to mix those, because my sort of, the trust I've built within the institution has been this sort of negotiation and facilitation behind the scenes, working through really difficult stuff and giving it the time it needs to work through, and to, see the decision making and the thought processes change over time, and giving it that space behind the scenes. So what I do, I do my activism outside of work, and there are things I do there. My role as an administrator, I will 100% support dialogue, like open dialogue. If there is a student perspective that is at odds with the administrative perspective, my role is to convene and facilitate the dialogue, and to provide my professional expertise. So this is a very active conversation on campus right now, and what I've found myself doing is having it is the institution trusts me enough to come to me and ask for my insights and opinions, and the students also trust me to talk to them about strategy. And when I explain my role, most students are like, okay, I get that. I totally get that. You can act over here and we can act over here. And I can give insights about how the institution works and put them together with people they should be talking to, and facilitate the dialogue in that way. So it's an important issue, and it's tough for sustainability offices because they're often caught in the middle. And so helping students understand where we can be effective and where we might be undermining ourselves is part of that, I think, part of that dialogue process. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. As kind of a follow-up to that, one of the questions we received asked if you have any advice for organizing a divestment movement on a high school or college campus.
Well, I'll build on something Tom said that helps tremendously. When you're having a difficult kind of conflict around a complex topic, where tensions are high, that empathy is so important. So you can disagree and you can have pretty heated discussions, but if there's a sense of listening on both sides, so if students and administrators come to the table listening to each other and empathizing with the other's views, and maybe disagreeing respectfully and civilly, then the dialogue continues, rather than getting sort of shut down or mired in a lot of negativity. So I think the students that I've been the most impressed with and who have actually gotten the most done on campus, who are the ones who come in, they sit in my office and they ask me a ton of questions. How does this place work? How does the decision-making process work? Like, where are the gaps? what can students do that you can't do? Like where can I be the most effective? And that listening mode, that like really genuine listening mode to try to figure out where can I be the most effective for change as a student at this moment is incredible, because most sustainability offices sit at a place in institutions to have a view on that, like a really good window into that, answering those questions. Because offices of sustainability often run up against barriers here and there that sometimes students can help break down. And I'll tell you, one thing that I've learned is that many administrators, all the administrators I work with, care deeply about what matters to students. But students assume that administrators know what's important to them. And so recently I told a group of students, I said, look, I will tell you right now that our vice president for campus life has never once heard from students that climate change is important. Not once. They're like, how is that possible? I'm like, I don't know. She came from Swarthmore. They talked about it all the time there, but here she comes to Princeton and she's not hearing it. And they're like, oh, okay. So that changed everything, because then they knew, they were like, oh, our voices, we're not speaking loudly enough. And so that there's something to be said for finding your voice in a way that's productive for that institution at that moment. So I'll stop there.
Great answer. Thank you, Dr. Weber. Okay, last question is very important. We're running over, but I hope everyone stays because this is the most popular one we've seen in the chat. So as a student, what can one do to be an effective force for change on their campus? And then how can we ensure the longevity of any projects that we work on?
I think, I mean, a lot of what's been said has sort of laid that out a little bit. I love the question about the longevity piece, because so often you see a really great project that is put forth by a senior and then they leave, and then, you know, all over college campuses and high school campuses, there are remnants. It's like archaeology. You know, there's remnants of past projects that are, you know, have fallen by the wayside. I think just asking that question, I think, means you're on the right track and you have the right mindset. That should be the first question in your mind: how to ensure the longevity of this project when you're even thinking about starting a project. And I think what you have to do, in my experience, is institutionalize it somehow. So you have to have someone responsible for the maintenance of that project long-term, far after you graduate. Because if it's an important project, then it's worth doing, and it's worth doing long-term. So.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's like you have to find a home for it, like a permanent home. Whether that's in the Office of Sustainability or some other unit, someone who feels responsible for it and will carry it on. That's the key.
Great. Well, that was our last question. So thank you so much again for speaking with us. This was great discussion. I feel like I learned so much from both of you. To all the NHS members watching, this is a reminder that our final summit is on Sunday, May 16th at 2 p.m. So we hope to see you there. And have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
so much for coming.
Thank you.
Bye.